Marcus King in the flesh.
George, how are you?
I can't believe that we're getting to see you and play in Tuscaloosa, Alabama right now, man. It's been way too long. I'm trying to figure out the last time we might have crossed paths. It's been well over a year and a half, maybe 2 years since we've seen you guys, considering we used to share the road with each other for a long time. So it's good to see your face. It's good to see you're alive and well. And tell me about what's been going on, man. I just feel like you're just constantly on the go, constantly moving. You have so many things that are going on for you right now.
Man, I've just been running and just staying constantly busy, just like you said. And I think that's just, some of us are just like that, and I've just been trying to keep busy. And especially, through the pandemic, there was a lot of writing that happened. So right now I've got 2 records in the can that are going to be coming out next year. So we've just been keeping really busy, man. And it's great to see you all. It's like, it's like the old days,
Yeah, it's nice to be seen.
Yeah, rather than viewed.
Yeah. To give a little context, we're in the middle of COVID right now. It's dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Ida everywhere. Yep. And Marcus is about to go out in a little bit, and I'm seeing him have some coffee, and that's a pre-show thing. Are there some other things that, like, rituals you do before a show? Are you superstitious about stuff? You have a pair of underwear you always wear? Or do you have? I see coffee. Coffee before would be a terrible idea for me. And singing, I guess it's good for you. What do you do? What's in your repertoire, if you mind?
Man, George, I kind of like to just be surprised with who I'm going to be when I get on that stage, and I tap into Leroy, my on-stage persona.
Leroy.
Right. He's a Pentecostal pastor from...
oh, sweet Jesus.
Yeah. So, I grew up watching a lot of Pentecostal pastors, and that in a large way, influenced my on-stage persona and the way that I can try to engage with the crowd and try to get them engaged with us.
Absolutely, yeah.
And listening to people like Aretha and just all my favorite artists, like, you never really see any, like, B-roll or anything of them, like, doing, like, vocal warm-ups and all that.
Yeah.
I try to just be good to my voice, and hopefully my voice will be good to me.
Understood.
And playing the same way. I mean, I just play a lot, but I'm not doing a lot of, like, rudimentary stuff,
You figured out a balance in a lane that works for you based off your, like, for you, your upbringing and your circumstances, and you've seen that, and that's what works for you, instead of, like, you're doing runs or getting into a mode, but your mode is the Pentecostal thing. You want to tell us about that? Your upbringing in the church and how that's affected you as a musician? Because a lot of people come from that kind of world, but for me, I haven't heard a lot of Pentecostal. The way, like, personally, I grew up in, like, a Greek Orthodox church, so it's very strange music to a lot of people, but it was normal to me. I don't know if when you came in the Pentecostal church, there's some things that you've taken into your persona, if you will, or your musical machismo.
Hey, machismo, I like that. Well, like having the Hammond organ and the Leslie on the stage.
Oh, yeah.
That's obviously something that's pulled from the Pentecostal church, and it's pulled from all the artists that I grew up listening to and admiring and looking up to vocally or, musically. And, just the energy and just the conviction that you see in the Pentecostal church growing up. I'm not a religious man now, but, even going back, like for my grandmother's funeral this past year.
Sorry to hear that.
Thank you very much. She was 90 years old, and she had a really fulfilling life. She was a beautiful human being. She raised me, but, like, even going back to her funeral and going back to my childhood church, it was really moving,
Nostalgic factor,
yeah.
I'm sure, too.
And I appreciate pastors like my pastor, Steve Bowen, and the assistant pastor, Ray Riddle, who I look up to so much just as positive male role models in my life.
People need that, man.
Yeah.
People need
because,
that.
They would preach hell and brimstone, but, for the most part, they would preach on the ideals of just morality and just being a good human being. Yeah. And just the principles that I feel like every religion kind of focuses on.
They all touch on that, for sure. And it's the other facets of it that everybody seems to focus on instead of just focusing on, I think we all want to be good people. I'd like to think the majority of us want to be good people.
It's like you can be pro-choice and you can be a good person.
Exactly. Yeah. So tell me about Nashville, man, because you've obviously moved there and it's giving you the opportunity to brush shoulders and just be in a place of constant creativity with a ton of cool people. How has that affected you as a musician, and I guess kind of the sound that you're getting into?
Well, I moved to Nashville in 2018, and I moved there with the intention of wanting to make a splash and wanting to let everyone know that I was there.
Okay.
So when I moved there, I didn't have no money, but I found a little house, and I found a 1980 Cadillac Eldorado.
Which, if you haven't gone on Marcus's Instagram to check it out, that thing is fucking sweet. It's real cool.
She's a beauty.
What's her name?
That's Betty.
Betty, nice.
Because the first time I got in the car to drive it, because I really rolled the dice. I found it online, and I sent it to my uncle. He's not a biological uncle, but, he's...
I got plenty of those, brother. I know you're talking about.
We all have that. And he's like family. I was like, hey, Mike, shout out to Mike Houston's Auto in Easley, South Carolina.
Let's
if you
go.
ever need your car works on.
Let's go.
I said, Mike, check this out, man. Like, I'm looking for a car like this. And he said, well, that one's $3,200. I think you ought to buy it.
What an uncle.
It had 60,000 miles on it.
That's it?
And
nice.
The paint job was great. The interior was immaculate. And I was like, okay. And we asked him, because it was up north where the car was. I said, can we see under the car? And they said, well, nah. So I was like, shoot. Well, I guess we're going to roll the dice. And they sent it down, and sure enough, no rust, nothing. Somebody babied that car, and it came from an estate sale.
Wow.
And when I took it on the first ride, old Black Betty was on the radio.
Without you telling me this story, I would have bet money that you had gotten that souped up in some capacity, whether it was like interior or paint or anything.
A thing.
That's amazing.
I did not.
You got to take good care of it forever, bro.
And
that's amazing.
That was my intention. I was like, man, I want people to know, like,
you're rolling. I'm coming into Nashville. I get that.
You see my car outside of RCA or Starstruck.
Yeah.
You see my car outside of this music publishing house or this music publishing house. You're like, Marcus King's in there working.
That's such like an old school mentality. I love that, man.
Well,
I'd be Ubering everywhere.
Well, it's like how I grew up, and like working with you guys from the early days. I remember, like, I always tried to wear a big hat, a loud outfit, and I'd wear red shoes because my whole mentality was like, people may not remember Marcus King, but they'll remember, like, you remember that guy?
That guy who had that
big hat, and he had the red shoes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I cut the red shoes out,
Okay, you tell our Dave about that. That motherfucker loves some red shoes.
Well, the only reason I cut them out was because I remember the last time I wore them was because we were playing at a venue where, we shared the bathroom with the audience.
Okay. The audience, okay.
And this was a good few years ago, and you go in a restroom and you just want a little privacy, but
exactly
when you have loud red shoes that are poking out from under the stall,
oh man,
you don't really want to talk about your set or like what you use.
Not at that time.
Your string gauge.
Do you want to talk about the shoes then? You willing to talk about that?
But my red Vans got retired on that day.
You know what, man? It's funny, and not to sidetrack you, but you're in the guitar world. We're a band with guitars, but you have guys that probably come up to you that are literally asking, what string gauge do you use? What do you record with while you're in the bathroom?
Yeah, and that's cool.
It's not what you expect when I hear from that. But tell me a little bit, if you don't mind, about what you have on stage here, because I was really intrigued about your setup. To go a little bit off the deep end,
sure.
But I'm totally intrigued by it if you're willing to give some of the information.
Well, for the gearheads out there, I've always had a super reverb on the stage, but I decided like 2 days or like a week before tour, I was like, man, I really want a GFL 500, a Bandmaster head, which is basically like a basement head, but it has a reverb tank in it. And I got that. Which is
gnarly. That's amazing.
It's a gnarly amp.
It's very cool.
But the output's not as much as I would like, so I had my amp guy rip the output transformer out of a brown face twin and pop it in there, which gave it a little bit more bite. And I think I got a really great deal on that on reverb.
Isn't reverb incredible? Not to sidetrack, but yeah.
And without getting myself in too much hot water here, my friend, He's actually my my weed guy who deals in medicinal in Michigan. He was like, "Oh man, that's like 20 minutes from my house." He was like, and he was bringing me my next batch down for the road.
What a guy.
I was like, "Well, would you pick my amp up?" So he brought the amp down, and then I went to Mom and Dad's Music in Clarksville, Tennessee, which my good friends own. You should check that place out if you're ever around the Nashville area. And I went out there, and they had a 215, late 60s cabinet that matched the late 60s Fender head that I just bought.
Very cool.
So my idea was like I want the 215s, and I wanted 810s because my good friend Dan Auerbach tours with 810 Bluesbreaker Marshall cabinets.
Okay.
Which I've always really dug the look of, but I've more so dug the sound of the 10s.
Understood.
Because it's like a Marshall, but it's the 10s, which I like from the Super Reverb.
Understood.
So I finally talked Orange Amplifiers into building me one, and we've been working together a couple years on a signature amplifier called the MK Ultra.
Badass, brother.
Badass. It's a 30-watt head, and it's got 6 L6s in it. It's the first Orange amplifier built and hand-wired in the USA.
Are you running these mono or stereo?
Stereo, baby.
And they're being used at the same time ever?
Yeah, all the time.
Wow.
Stereo, all the time. Being
cool,
because one's
man.
dry and one's wet.
Very cool. Yeah, it's interesting because I was talking to Steven, your bass player out there, during our check. And I was like, Steven, tell me about your 810 right here. It was just next to the Fender. He's like, that's all Marcus's stuff. I was like, no, it's fucking not, dude. Are you serious? Like, yeah, my 810's over here. So I was like, oh, I know what that thing is. I want to see what this rig on here is, man.
Yeah, man. It's a one-of-a-kind right now.
It's really cool, man. And it's nice to see you taking some risks and trying some cool shit out. And not that, like, Kemper shit isn't cool because everything has a purpose and everything works for certain stuff. But it's fucking rock and roll, man.
Yeah, rock and roll is always going to be rock and roll.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, bands like Greta Van Fleet are good friends of ours because they're just playing rock and roll, man.
Rock and roll.
And they're just loud, and they're good dudes. They're good friends of ours, and they get a lot of
flack, if you will.
A lot of flack. That's a good word for it, but they're good friends of ours. And I've gone to their rehearsal space, and, like, they just jam, man. They're just loud and just young and just happy to be playing rock and roll.
Now, like, you're almost considered like an elder statesman to them at this point, you'd say, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm starting to get old. I'm 25.
Golly.
In my old age here, yeah.
Well, you are definitely wise beyond your years.
Thank you.
And I don't want to take up too much of your time, but it's so good to see you, man. And it's
good
so
good
to be seen. Yeah. And it's hopefully there'll be more of this in the world where we can just start playing more festivals and stuff. And it's
absolutely.
It's just good to have friends be around and to get the hang, man. So we're excited to play the show in Tuscaloosa. There's definitely going to be hanging after, and there'll definitely be some fun stories that we're going to tell off the air. So, But yeah, Marcus King on a Call My Friends, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, man.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right.